G'day mates, welcome back. Tomorrow is the last day that we're going to have our light show up, so just thought I'd go and walk around and show you some of the different things that we've done this year. Alright, the yard matrices, they're a little bit different. So I saw on Facebook someone had a video of them using, or it might have been a photo of them using temporary fencing, so that's what they're on now. Previously we used to have wooden structures like this one, and the reason why they weren't that great was when you had to get them out each year, you'd normally have to rebuild them all. They didn't really last that well. They took up a lot of space trying to store them. So this year the advantage that we have is pull the concrete blocks out that are down the bottom there and be able to just stack the temporary fence down the side of the house. So it should take up a lot less space. A lot easier to manoeuvre and get behind if you need to fix anything as well. So got that advantage now. One of the things that isn't great with them is, go around the back and you can probably see where the bar ends, which is here. So these fences are more like a H pattern. So along the top you either need to get your own bar, or what we did was basically got 3.2 millimeter stainless steel and put it inside of that PVC pipe, and then just use tensioners on either side. So over time, if it sags, you can always tighten those tensioners up. Gives you something to wrap the top of the matrix around. And the other advantage is, if it was to snap, it shouldn't, because it's 3.2 mil stainless, it's pretty thick. If it was to snap, it should theoretically snap inside of the PVC pipe, so it shouldn't, break open and hurt anyone, is the main thing there. Another thing that's really good is you've actually got the ability for the CG 1500 enclosures. You can actually get hose clamps and just clamp them onto these fences. So that's made a big difference this year in terms of setup, because all we really needed to do was kind of modify the fence a little bit to give it that top part for us to mount onto, and a little bit of work on the CG 1500 box just to let a hose clamp go through it, but really not a lot to get it where it's at. And available to local Bunnings stores, so it was pretty easy to find everything. So we got those two there, and that was made everything a lot easier for those two bits. I just thought I'd mention as well, so last year the way that we've got our controllers set up, they're all behind the garage except for the one that's outdoors. So we used to have this big chunk of wires that kind of went from here across to all the stuff on this side of the house, or this side of the yard. Problem being is, obviously, then you'd have a massive cable all over the yard. This way we kind of avoid that, because we do get occasionally, kids and stuff running around when they're looking at the lights. And also it means that if you want to, you've actually got the ability to mow a little bit, so it makes it a little bit easier there. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about, because I know a lot of people ask, is so these CG 1500, I think they are, enclosures. Let's open it. This has been out all day, all night, in weather, so had quite a bit of rain this year. Had not leaked once, and as you can see, there is no gasket on the inside of here. They're actually quite sealed as it is, so if anyone's sort of worried or wondering whether they need to worry about sealing these boxes a little bit better, maybe in snow in America where you guys have got to worry about that, in Australia, at least here, it's been fine. Didn't get wet in there at all. You can as well, for these controllers, there is actually a fan spot down here if you did want to actually vent the controller. We don't actually turn our controllers on normally until kind of 6:50 at night. This year we haven't really had a hugely hot summer, so it's been a little bit easier in terms of temperature. I think when I've checked them, they've been around 40 degrees, and I think the Pix lights, that's kind of their maximum running temperature. So you may, depending on where you mount them, actually have some issues with that, but so far we've been pretty good with all that sort of thing. Alright, well realistically the temporary fencing panels is probably the main difference that we've really got this year. There's a couple of other small things, but I will just run through the same as what I did in a previous video, just kind of showing what we've done for mounting everything, just to talk through it again and show people that might be interested or trying to get ideas themselves. Okay, for side of the house, so as you can see, just where it kind of wraps around here, this is I think it's called plaster strip. I really don't know the name of it, but if you go to Bunnings and ask for it, I think it's called plaster strips. It's got holes in it the whole way. it's actually ferrous material, so if you actually wanted to mount magnets or something on the side of your house to use, you can use that. We then use brick clips. So what they are is they're just a little clip where basically the bottom of it's just a spring, and the top of it you can kind of see it's a serrated edge. They are normally quite good when you're trying to mount stuff like that where it's really close to the house. I wouldn't really recommend doing it for things like matrices. The weight of it just won't be supported properly, but it's a really good way of mounting something without having to actually drill into your brick. We have drilled into the brick in a couple of places just to make it easier to hang some things, but you don't want to have to do it for things like this strip lighting where you've got to do it multiple times all the way up. You're better off just to use a brick clip, and then end of the season, just cut your cable tie, pop it off. You can then go and install this strip. The only downside that I find with this type of stripping is that it's actually quite easy to bend. So you'll see on the side here, there's a bit of a kink in it. It is good that you can actually label them though. So we label all of them, so next season when we get them out, it's quite easy to basically know where they're meant to go. For our matrices along here, we've basically drilled into the house and put a couple of long bits of wood up, and then screwed in these eye hooklets, and we've also then just used, again, so stainless steel wire with a little, I think it's like a little clamp that holds them in, and then basically got what you'd have on the end of a dog lead, so dog lead clip, and then on top of that we've just done cable ties. Surprisingly, the cable ties actually hold up quite well when you distribute the weight like we have. So we've got actually 4 on this, which is this is the heaviest panel of all of them. These ones on the side are really not that heavy. We get the advantage as well, as you can see, of running the wires along the top of the wood, and it's really not, it's not that visible at night. Surprisingly, it's very difficult to actually see where all of these wires run, so that's quite good. Moving around, strip lighting, if you can avoid it, it's just terrible to work with. When you've got joins like we have, we've been pretty lazy with it, just joined it by connecting the 2 things together. If something goes wrong with it, generally, you're best off just having a whole separate thing to replace with it. We've done for a few years now double-sided tape to mount it. Works okay, but as you can see up here, it's starting to peel away already. It's quite good for getting very straight lines. We get quite a lot of people that comment and say, how do you get it so straight? And I was like, well, we actually double-sided tape it to the house. The problem with it is the double-sided tape is incredibly, incredibly difficult to remove. Strip lighting, when it's around your roof line like that, it's incredibly unreliable. So if something goes wrong, it's very difficult to fix. And especially at the height, this is the highest part of the house. If something goes wrong with those lights, it's quite difficult to do anything about it with. Whereas if you've got something on the ground, or if you've got a pixel, like a standard bullet pixel, all you've got to do is normally replace maybe 1 or 2, and you might get a whole strand to come good. With the strip lighting, you can have a whole strip go out, or a whole section go a different colour or a wrong colour, and you've got to replace a section, and it's quite difficult to do. So it's not impossible, but it's a lot more harder than the standard bullet pixel, where basically all you're going to do is swap one of those out, rather than having to cut a section of strip and replace the strip to get it back to operational again. Coming around to the front of the house, last year we only had matrices that were, we've got 576 pixels. So these ones are 1,920, and again, it's just temporary fencing. Put some blocks on them so that they sit up a bit higher and to kind of cover as much of the garage door as possible. We've used strip lighting around the outside. It was actually kind of easier to do it that way. So the strip lighting is actually just aluminium channel, and it's just cable tied around the outside of the fencing. So previously what we had was I built these aluminium frames to sit on the inside of the garage doors here. Obviously now with where the temporary fencing sits, it's not really possible to do that, but it actually kind of worked out okay and it also sort of stabilizes the edge of the matrix, and it doesn't look that bad either. We thought it might look a little bit weird because of how close they are, but it actually looks quite okay. So when we put the videos up, you'll be able to see that. Looking up to the stars, the snowflakes, I don't know if you can see it, I'll just zoom in. They're literally held up, so it's quite a busy road, with two nails that are just knocked into the mortar and they sit on top of it. And even when it's been quite windy, they don't actually fall down, which is quite good. The stars, I've actually done a screw that goes into the actual brick, so they're quite easy to take down, put up, because all you do is just screw that in each year. The stocking, a little bit harder to see, but basically what we've got is 3 different points. There's 2 or 3 that are all in the brick, and then we've got cable ties that are sort of cable tied around those screws to secure it. It just helps it stay in place. There's nothing that actually pushes the bottom side of it in, it's just the stuff up the top. We're lucky here we don't get really high winds. The few times we have, it's sort of rocked around. It's never really fallen off the house. It's just been quite good. Now, as I mentioned before, I'll do some stuff inside, but we try and keep all the wiring going inside. The advantage that we have with that is, most of our controllers are inside. As I said though, the main one that we've got out here, I was cautious about it. I thought, well, if I've got a spare controller, if something goes wrong, I can run all the wires back into here, but it's worked perfectly fine having that controller over there for the whole season, so I've been quite impressed. We've just got the one Ethernet cable that sort of goes along there. You can see the blue one comes in here, goes inside, and then goes to the switch that's inside there. So it's actually, it's worked surprisingly well. Alright, well, I'll go and show you a couple other things shortly. Most of this is all the same. So for the candy canes, we literally just use stakes, cable tied around them, where you can it's really easy to orient them a different way. This little thing here is our Tune 2 matrix, and again, all it is just held up with one stake, cable tie around the top. If you can see it, there you go. Now, quite a lot of people ask about how we do the arches. Not my idea, I saw someone else do it, but basically what we have, I don't know if it'll be easy to see with all the growth we've had from rain, but there we go. That's just a piece of Rio, so like what you'd use for concrete. So on both sides we actually have just it's literally just a long piece of Rio staked into the ground. PVC pipe goes up over the top of it, and then on the other side you've got the same thing. So for all 4 of these, that's all they're held up with. Now, most of them, because we've got a hedge behind it, actually hold on pretty well. But the one that doesn't is this one. So we've actually just got a jockey strap to hold onto the hedge behind it to sort of hold it back so it doesn't fall down. The trees are just staked into the ground with tent pegs. There's nothing special there. And then our speakers, they're just J-car speakers that are sitting in there. As you can see, it's quite difficult to mow everything, so I've mowed once since we started started December. So that's why it's getting to the point where we need to do it again, which luckily at least tomorrow we're going to take it all down. So yeah, that's the front section of the house. And then you've got the sleigh and the kangaroos, which again, all they are is just staked into the ground and then cable tied around them. Alright, roof mounting. So I'll show you the other side because I've got another singing tree up there, but basically what we've done with this, might be a bit hard to see, we've got the ability where we can tie off to the kind of the A-frame at the back of the house there. So we've got the frame that the singing tree's on, but we've also then tied it back. So that way, if it does get windy or if something happens, it's actually going to pull all of that weight of the house down to actually move it. Whereas if you don't do that, you sort of run the risk of, as soon as there's a bit of wind, it's going to shift that frame around. So that's what we've done there. This year as well, because we've got the controller just there, last year I had to run the wiring kind of over the top of the house from the right and then down to this singing tree, and had to use null pixels and stuff. This year, because the data run is not so long, we've actually been able to avoid having to use as much wiring, but also avoid using null pixels. So that worked out pretty well. Righto, so this is the singing bulbs. A lot of people ask us a lot of questions about how do we do this. So if you're in America, you can actually order from the Peace Family light shows. They make a board called the Pixel to DC or Pixel to AC. In Australia, which we can get these overseas as well because Hanson Electronics do ship them overseas. is you've got the Hanson Electric, what's it called? Can't even remember. He's got a board that does same thing as what a Pixel to DC does. So what this control box basically does is it's all effectively just switches based on whether you set it send red, green or blue. And then on the right hand side we've actually got relays, so that with these motors, because they're reverse polarity, one way it'll push the motor up, the other way it'll push the motor down. Basically what will happen is when we send it the red signal, this is where we've got it set up, you can use whatever you want, but we have it set up so that when we send it full red, it'll actually turn our DC motors on, and then when we turn off that signal, it reverses the relay and reverses the polarity of the motor, and they'll actually shift down to where they are at the moment. These motors are just gate motors off eBay, and they are, there you go, there's the settings, or not the settings, the load of them. So max load 1000 N push, 800 N pull, speeds 14 millimeters a second, stroke length and all that sort of thing. Now, they're quite heavy duty. They probably don't need to be, given they're not pushing a lot of weight, but it was just what we used when we were trying to figure it out. Now, last year as well, we actually had, again, these frames that we've got here. The previous frames are all made out of wood. And what we were finding would happen is, because you've actually got a lot of force that gets pushed by these motors, it would actually push the back of the back side of the wood out and sometimes break it. So what I've done this year is just got this square bar, and then in the back side of it, I don't know if you can see that, there's actually a bolt that just goes through to the bottom, and then we've just used tent pegs to kind of stabilize it in the back of the thing. So again, the other advantage of this is when we pack it all down, the motors you can just take out with the little clips that are on the side. So those things there, and the whole frame, if you want, you can actually just unbolt. So it just makes it a lot easier, a lot more portable. It's going to last a lot more than just 1 month in a year. So that's why we took the time to do that. Again, the CG 1500 enclosures that we've got, that one as well, heaps of wind, water, rain, hasn't mattered. It's all been fine the whole time, so can definitely recommend them if you want to put stuff outdoors. This one as well, again, I've just hard for me to see, yeah, there we go, just used a hose clamp to clamp it onto a stake just to hold it in place. So the advantage that we have is when you look at it from here, you can't actually see those at all. So for a lot of people, it's quite a surprise when there's all of a sudden see these singing lights come up and start singing at them. That's most of that side of the house. This side of the house is pretty simple. The Gera wreath, it was an old just step that we put together, and it just sits on the top of that. And then I've actually just put some weights on the back of it, so we can't put it backwards. Next year I'll probably change that a little bit. I just would prefer something that's a little bit more stable and not made out of wood and a bit more portable, so that when we pack it all up, we're not using a lot of space. The singing tree up here, the reason why we do that on that angle is most people actually approach our show from this side of the road, so it means that they can see the singing trees and everything before they actually get to see the rest of the show. Keeps everyone entertained. You can kind of see here the way that the frames are built. So it's just a normal base with an angle, and then you can sit the tree either on top of that or sort of facing back. Again, what we've done is I've actually roped it. You can see the ropes that are going down. They tie off on the actual gutter clips that hold the gutters up to the house. So I've done some that are on this side, some that go back, and then some that go up and over and then down onto the other side. And the reason for that is, again, if it gets windy, it's got to sort of pull one whole side down before it can actually move anywhere. So, last thing you want is, for especially stuff on your roof, you don't want to go in flying or moving anywhere. So that's allowed us to do that with minimal effort. Don't have to, I've seen some people that have done, it's quite a smart idea where you can actually put roof strapping in under the tiles or under your, or just bolt right into your roof. This which makes it a bit easier. So as I said, all of these things got the advantage that we can just tie them off with cable ties directly onto the fence. I've actually done we've got vents on the side of the house. Again, you can't really see this from the road, so it's fine, but it saves us having to drill anything through. Stuff that's on the roof, I just poke them through the vents there, and that allows us to get all the wiring in. And then same with, to go and show you, but down the bottom we've got another set, which is where all this wiring runs to. And then again, this stuff's all simple. Alright, now just going to run you through the mega tree quickly. I think I've done a video on this, but I'll just explain it. For anyone that wants to do a really simple mega tree, this is 24 strands of 48, I believe it is, so it's 1,920 lights. It's at 1 inch spacing rather than 2 inch, just because I didn't really want it to be massively high. And to be honest, I think that you could probably get away with doing 2 inch spacing and still have a pretty good effect, but it was interesting to do it at 1 inch. This year we replaced all of the strips with the Boscoyo straps, which are much thinner than the other type that you get from vendors like E-Top, and I think Hanson Electric had it for a while as well. There's another type that's really, really thick. It's quite heavy. It's quite durable, but much more difficult to work with, much more heavier. So as much as it was annoying to have to undo all of these lights from the other type of plastic and put them in here, the advantage is it's going to take up a lot less space when we pack it all up. So the way this tree's built, the guys at the G Family Light Show, this is actually the base of this, a bit hard to see because of all the grass, is actually the rim lock off a dump truck. They've got the other half for their tree, so thanks to Brenton and Em for actually giving us this part to help us to build this. And the back side of it, our old next door neighbour actually came over one day and I was explaining what I wanted to do, and he said, I'll be back in a week, I'll build you something. So the bottom part of it is basically a truck rim, so you've got quite a bit of weight in the base, and then you've just got a pole that's set here, and then a telescopic pole at the top with a bolt on the back of it. Now, the topper is from Extreme Lighting Display, so just a stainless steel topper, and then you just buy J-hooks for the top to run around the top there. What we did was the old plastic stuff, we just sort of collected and looped around the top to give it a bit more stability. For the base, what would be good is to actually have some hooks on the bottom, but what we got away with doing this time is just looping the bottom and then cable tying it up, so a bit hard to see because of all the grass. It's a bit weird in Australia this year because we've actually had grass grow because of the rain, so it's interesting to look at. Yeah, that's basically all it is. The star is just another post that it gets bolted through, and I've just got a couple of bits of marine ply and then epoxied in another pole for the star to sit on. Now, in terms of stabilisation, I know that a lot of people always ask, what do you do to keep the tree stable? Obviously, we don't have to worry too much because it's not a massive tree, but we'll just use these massive stakes in the ground, loop them up through here on a ratchet strap, and as you can see, it can take a fair bit of a shaking and it's not going anywhere. So that's the way that we've done it. We did have last year, the tree actually fell over because we didn't have it strapped in the way that we have like this. And although it didn't really damage too much, it actually broke some of the wiring of the lights, and we needed to replace the lights to actually get it back up and running. So this year we just thought, well, be safe and just do what we've done here. It's quite visible at night, obviously, when it's fluoro coloured, but it just means it's easier for people to see. If they want to walk around, they're not going to trip over that. It's much more visible. Now, one thing I will have a quick chat about before I go and show you around stuff inside. Scotchlocks are the size of these are UY2. Highly recommend going and getting some of those. You can get Scotchlocks from Bunnings, but they'll give you an irrigation type, which don't have quite the right size for this type of wiring on pixels. You're better off to go to a wholesaler like L&H, or any electrical wholesaler should have that sort of stuff. And the size is UY2 for those, and it'll fit perfectly. They're really good because you can actually, you strip your wires basically. If I've got some inside, I'll show everyone, but basically you strip your wires, push them in the back here. They're gel filled, so it's meant to stop corrosion, stop water and that sort of thing, and then you can just crimp them in. This year, for some reason, we had quite a few lights on this tree go out, cause problems, and it just meant that basically what we could do is turn off, well, that's one thing I haven't shown, that I will in a second. We could just turn off the power supply to the tree and fix the lights up, turn the power supply back on, and we were good to go. So I'll just show you these. These are the power boxes that we use for the lights. They're waterproof, And then inside, that's what we've got. Basically, this one, I think it's a 400 watt mean wall power supply. It doesn't need to be 400 watt realistically, it's just what we had. And the tops of these boxes are sealed, like got a seal around them, got a rubber seal. There's a little bit of water that got into this one this year, not enough to cause it any damage. But again, this is probably it's been like that for a good 2 or 3 weeks. A couple of spiders and stuff in there. Other than that, it's fine. But the top, this is what I was going to say, the top of the Hanson Electric Power 8s. Now, what they are is actually a power distribution board, but it also has a thing called a null buffer. So that's what this is at the back here. So the null buffer is basically the same as adding a null pixel, with the advantage of not having to actually program into your controller the fact that you've actually got null pixels. So it just passes through, replicates the data, so it's the same thing as having a null pixel without having to program it in. Other than that, you've got 8 fused power outputs. One of them is the null, obviously. And so if something goes out, you'll actually have these LED indicators on the back side will actually light up, which a lot of people sort of like, oh, why would you bother about that? When it's at night and you're running around trying to figure out what's going on, it's quite easy to see a problem then. Just pop the thing off and you can say, okay, it's that particular fuse, because that's what you can see. So yeah, that's pretty much everything we've got going on the outside. Hopefully that's going to help people to get some ideas on how to mount things. If anyone's got some good ideas on how to avoid using strips on these outsides of the house and guttering, that'd be great, because I'm sick of doing that. I'd much prefer to do it another way. Very tempted to buy a 3D printer and just give that a go, but yeah, I guess we've got 12 months to figure it out. Alright, well I'll go inside and we'll show you a couple of things inside. Alright, now you've seen the outside of the house. Now I'll show you what's in behind the garage doors, which for us runs, the majority of it. Like I said, there's one controller outside, the rest are all inside. Same with our networking equipment, our FM transmitter, amplifier for the stuff that's outside, Raspberry Pi that runs the show. So I'll just show you where I've set all that up. And main 240 for the controllers on this side, just so it's out of the way. Runs up along there. Drop it down. And then we've just got a power board down here. These things are great. They're probably the cheapest like time 240 volt thing you can get. They're Arlic Grid Connect. Basically just get an app in your phone. So that's what we actually use. This is, it's got 240 volt going to this 100% of the time, but you can actually schedule when these come on. So, and you can also turn them off individually. So for example, this is what actually runs the DC motors that are out the front. So if we have a really windy night, you can actually just turn off those motors. So once everything's settled down, it's back on the ground, we can turn this off entirely. And so it'll still send the signals and stuff. The lights will still light up, but you don't have to worry about them actually going up and getting in the wind. So that's why we kind of set it up like this. It allows us to actually turn things off individually if we want to. A couple of people asking about the controllers inside. It's really no different to mounting them outside. So that's the inside of our CG1500 boxes. You've got the Pixelite 16 Mark IIs down the bottom, 320 watt power supply up the top. I've just done 4 big glands and then ran it out the bottom. RJ45 connector, which is just a pass through on the side. A bit of a weird thing because there's a loop in there, but you kind of don't have a lot of space. Worst case scenario too, like with the ones that are inside, you can always unbolt that and just run it up and go straight in if you wanted to. I just did them like this because it meant if I ever did decide to do an outside one like we did this year, they're good to go for outside or they're good to go for inside. Now, the network cables, just clipped up, run over the top. And they run down into here, which is our TP-Link switch. And so this runs to all of the controllers, even the one that's outside, our Raspberry Pi, and we've got another power board over here for running these 2 controllers. So I've kind of separated it, so the controllers on this side of the house run the left-hand side, the controllers on the right run the right-hand side. This year we've actually got 1 spare controller inside on the wall. It's literally doing nothing, but it's good to just have a spare to be able to use if you need to. I've also got another one spare. It's just sitting on the ground because I went a bit crazy and got too many of them, and then got better at learning how to do it all, and then realised I didn't actually need as many as I had. So this is another interesting thing is I thought this would suck. So I've actually done, because like I said, we have ran the wires straight out through our vents. Again, saves having to run things. Like we've got a little bit that goes under the doors just for the matrices that are at the front. but it just means that we don't have to drill any holes or anything. It just runs straight out the vents. The problem is, obviously, you're not going to get a pigtail through that size. So what I've actually done is the pigtails are basically bullet connectors. So you got a female bullet connector on one side and then a male on the other side. First of all, I thought, no, it's not going to be a good enough connection. It won't work all that well. Surprisingly, they work fine. So, you know, with that type of wiring on either side, I've not had any issues with it at all. The couple of issues that we have actually had is normally been with connectors outside, not to do with the connectors that we've got here. So, yeah, if you're thinking of trying to do something like this, bullet connectors actually work. Obviously, long term, you'd probably have to replace them because they do get corroded and stuff on the inside. This is the second season of us running this as it is like this, and it's still perfectly fine. It means when we pack it all up for the season as well, just unplug them all where they are, pull them back through, pack them in a box, and they're good to go for next year. If they do get torn as well, they're quite easy to replace. You just pull them off, strip some wire up, and go again. Another thing, this is the power supply that runs the matrices. Obviously it's another power 8. Need to get a bit better mounting solution rather than this bit of plastic they cut in half, but it does the job for now. And this mounting bracket here as well, it's literally, again, just a bit of aluminium that I've actually just bent up and then put in between the two garage doors. It's not ideal. I mean, it'd be better to have it actually, you know, sealed and in a box, but it does the job. It hasn't caused us any issues. This being loose, obviously, yeah, best case scenario for this is actually have a plate that would mount on, so you don't have the wires sort of hanging and being stressed all the time. But yeah, it does what we need it to do. All right, messy workbench as it should be. Should always be doing stuff. But here we've got the Raspberry Pi that runs it all. It's just a Raspberry Pi 3. It's nothing special. Not a 4 or anything, and just a case that I got from Jcar. I took the top of the case off because, again, it was, I think the temperature when I checked it one night was around 50, 60 degrees, so just taking that case off and opening a window sort of gives it more ventilation. This one we have actually used these heat sinks on. It's not too hot at the moment, so you can actually put your hand on it, as you can see, but it does help to dissipate the heat and sort of keep it a bit more stable. The network goes back over to the switch that I showed you before, and again we've just got another, you know, it's constantly on 240 volt. The Raspberry Pi we leave on 100% of the time. Then we've got the Mega Tree that's on a power supply by itself, amplifier, just again it's just a Jcar one, and then the controllers, which is the controllers I was showing you on the wall before. So again, it just means the main thing that I had this set up for, again with the Grid Connect, is we can actually be outside, open the Grid Connect app and go, okay, there's a problem with the Mega Tree, mark the actual node that was wrong, basically press a button in the app, turn the 240 volt power off to it, because there's no power from the controllers to that tree, it's all off that one 240 volt controller, so it means that we could just turn it all off, fix what we needed to fix, and then turn it back on. Because I've had some problems in the past where I've actually cut some wires and in the process of doing it shorted a few more lights out, and then I had to replace more, and it gets frustrating. So I've rebuilt it this year so that this can actually fully isolate the tree, so we don't need to worry about that problem. Alright, probably last of all, this is what I wanted to show you. These are the Scotchlocks that you can get from Bunnings. They're not called Scotchlocks, they're called like irrigation clips or something. They're in the garden section. Now, kind of hard to see, but these are a 3-wire one, so the actual wiring diameter is quite small, but they're the same thing. If you can get your wires in there, you just crimp it down with a set of pliers. I can probably do it with my finger like this. You hear it pop. That'll actually push the gel out and keep it all sealed, and then that'll do another connection. So saving having to actually go and resolder everything. It's just a really quick way of fixing it. I'd recommend though that when you actually have this, that you do, you know, if you've used these throughout the season, before you actually start at the next season, go and cut these out and replace it with just, solder things in. They can corrode over time. They're not a long-term solution. They're designed to be a short-term fix. So don't rely on them for some people do, but I think it's probably better to fix things properly. All right, I just thought I'd show you, this is just opening the garage door. So this is the other advantage that you have with temporary fencing. We unfortunately did have a couple of nights where we had things go wrong, and the good thing is I can just come in and pop these lights out, fix it from in here. Even if it's raining, I'm not going to get too wet or anything, fix it all up. So yeah, it was quite good to have them set up like that. We've actually got The way that I normally do power injection is basically I just use a female end and put red insulation tape on it to mark that it's a power injecting pigtail. And then same thing here. So on the male side, which will then go back down to the power 8. Next year, the main thing I'll probably change is these ones were sharing power with the controllers. And again, what you find is, if you need to fix something up, the problem is then you don't want to shut your controller off because it'll shut off the rest of the show. Whereas if you can just shut off a power supply, you can then fix everything you need to. You're not running the risk of actually shorting anything out, and then you're good to turn everything back on once you've actually fixed it up. You can kind of see a bit better the way that we've done the PVC pipe. So basically that's the stainless steel, goes inside the pipe. We use some swages to connect it, and then you've got a turnbuckle on this side to be able to connect it back up. This is unnecessary, so you can put another power injector on the end of that, but I haven't really needed to. And as well, in terms of power injection, it really depends on, I guess, the intensity of your lights. These ones I think we inject maybe roughly around every 300 for the panels, and it works fine. It's but we only really run these at 25%. So if you want to run them higher, you might need to inject, say, every 100 or something like that, like most people recommend. And yeah, it's it really just comes down to what you're doing. Also, as well, if you're using a lot of bright white, you probably would have to do every maybe 150 or something like that. So yeah, that's guess that's pretty much it. Except for one other thing. These bits here are just what you get on, I think they're called like an axe guard. I can't remember the exact name of them, but they're basically what you'd put around the top of an axe or the top of a mattock or a shovel. So when you actually strike something, if it hits wood, it's not going to break it. It's actually just a bit of a buffer to stop that happening. So they're really good because you can actually, the back side of them is open, as you can see here. So you can actually tuck all your wires in. That way, when we close the garage door, it's going to sit onto those rubber blocks, rather than actually sitting on the wires directly and potentially crimping them. So, yeah, hopefully that's going to help everyone out. But yeah, that's the way that we've mounted everything, and look forward to seeing some other creative ideas from everyone as well.